Hey guys, you're watching Mia's new pair of glasses, and I'm back with another video today to talk about how you are born into slavery and explain why. If you remember, I made a video recently called F the Shepherds, Don't Be a Sheep. Well, I'm going to now go into detail as to explain why I say that and what most people on this earth and in this country have no idea about. The definition of slavery. It's a noun, the state of being a slave. Synonyms: bondage, enslavement, servitude, thraldom, thrall, serfdom, etc. The practice or system of owning slaves. A condition compared to that of a slave in respect of exhausting labor or restricted freedom. When you have a new baby, it can be a really exciting, amazing time. But what people do not understand is when you have that baby in the hospital and you have a birth certificate that is created and signed, you are basically handing over the title of your child to the establishment. You may ask, how? How are humans collateral? Well, we're going to talk about why. That gold to back the financial system was actually exchanged for people. So when did this happen? This actually happened back in 1933, exactly 84 years ago. On April 20th, 1933, the United States abandoned the gold standard, delinking the value of the dollar to gold. The person responsible for that was President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had urged Congress to take up reform of the currency system in January of that year. But what's not talked about is what replaced gold as the value behind the dollar was actually people. Under executive order of the president, all persons are required to deliver on or before May 1st, 1933, all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates now owned by them to a Federal Reserve Bank, branch, or agency, or to any member of the Federal Reserve System. When the United States or any other country with banknote birth certificate, it works the same way, declared bankruptcy, pledged all Americans as collateral against the national debt, and confiscated all gold, eliminating the means by which you could pay. It also assumed legal responsibility for providing a new way for you to pay. And it did that by providing what is known as the exemption, an exemption from having to pay for anything. In practical terms, though, this means giving each American something to pay with, and that something is your credit. When you were born, a legal personality or corporation is created called a strawman. This is a paper you, or a legal version of you. This is created so that you can operate within the legal system. One reason it is designed is to get you to agree to verbal and written contracts. So when they ask you, do you understand? It means, do you stand under our authority? This all happens when you are born and your birth certificate is created. And this is all to create revenue. So much to the point that you or your legal corporate personhood are being traded on the stock market. Now, this might be kind of confusing to people that have never heard this before, and you may wonder, well, how can I be traded on the stock market? Well, let's talk more about this. When you register something like your car, you are only its keeper, handing over the title to the government so it can take it whenever it chooses. Say, for example, when you don't pay your taxes. A birth certificate is you registering your child to the establishment. Typically, this is done when the mother signs it and the father is away. What happens then is they assign the child over to the state. They now become a ward of the state. Parents are just the guardian. It's why the state can come in and take your child, say, if they don't like what you're doing. So when you are 18, if your corporate personhood is not claimed, you need to go claim it. It's your birthright. Most are kept ignorant of this. If you do not do this, you are considered lost at sea, all under and according to maritime admiralty law, which is what we really operate under. Everything with your straw man's name, your unclaimed corporate personhood, is in capital letters. Birth certificates, driver's license, marriage license, passport, credit card, car registration, and even your tombstone. Your tombstone in all caps, like everything else with your name, because of your corporate personhood. Corporation from the root corpse, meaning dead. So your straw man, the legal you, is dead. So what you have to understand is the legal system is there for corporations, not people. When you are a corporation, you have all the same rights as a corporation. People do not have those rights. So now let's go back to you being traded on the stock market and why you, your straw man, has value. The straw man version of you is worth money, as you were sold to the Federal Reserve or the banks. And by the way, the Federal Reserve is a privately owned company. This is not a government organization. This is privately owned. Your straw man is worth money. It's why in the military they teach leave no man behind. It's why it's so important they get the bodies back. You are collateral. That's why in war, they need to bring all the bodies back so they can go into probate. That's why they can't, nor would they, do anything to harm us. There is no depopulation effort because they don't own us. When you see that the entire game is about money, you can start to determine what distractions muddy the water. Your value to society was then and still is calculated using actuarial tables, and at birth, bonds equal to this average value are created. I understand that this is currently between $1 and $2 million. These bonds are collateralized by your birth certificate, which becomes a negotiable instrument. The bonds are hypothecated, traded until their value is unlimited for all intents and purposes, and all that credit created is technically and rightfully yours. In point of fact, you should be able to go into any store in America and buy anything and everything in sight, telling the clerk to charge it to your exemption account, which is identified by a 9-digit number that you will recognize as your Social Security number without the dashes. And here is an example of a birth certificate, and on that birth certificate is an identifiable number as well as stating American Bank Note Company. That's right, it is a bank note. It is on the actual birth certificate. The birth certificate is even on the same paper as any bank note, including stocks, bonds, treasury bills, savings bonds, etc. Is it now becoming clear that you, your corporate personhood, is actually worth value and that you are owned and being traded? Are you starting to fit the definition of slavery? Now, they only control the persona, not the living, breathing flesh and blood man or woman. They have absconded with nearly all our rights from the moment you are born until the moment you exit this frequency. Now let's go back and review. They only acknowledge the mother as she signs Schedule 1 of the birth certificate. They declare the baby dead and appoint the parents only the guardians and administrators until the child reaches maturity. Now the parents actually have 30 or 60 days to declare the child's life, otherwise the courts take over as administrator. The state takes out a loan against you, which is what they want your taxes to pay off for. Being now among the living dead, you have an all capital letter driver's license, passport, credit card, bank card, just like your tombstone. You all have money being administered by the state, which runs into millions, and the only way they can access it is through legal aid, hence all the fines, which are artificial, that they create to fleece you. On a tombstone, you will see the name of your loved ones chiseled in all caps. They are dead, and so are you, deemed the same all your life. Now you may wonder, why does your birth certificate not include the soul print that they take at birth? because you only have a copy. Originals are held at the place of the entity that owns you. It is rumored to be at the Vatican, who owns your soul or soul. Now, why is the soul so important? Well, if you go back to my video on grounding and why the sole of your foot is called the soul, and I will link that in the description, as well as my video on the importance of language and that all vowels are interchangeable. If the Vatican has our soul, which is the thing at the bottom of our foot that connects us to the earth, that charges us, heals us, and gives us energy, then there must be a reason why it is so important to them to actually have our souls. The least of which is that we, or our legal us, has value and that we are owned. So every time that you participate in the system, you need to understand that you are operating as a slave who is owned. That means when you register something, when you have a child that's born, when you get married, when you pay taxes, you are operating as a slave within a slave system. So that's all I have for you guys today. If you want to research into how to reclaim your corporate personhood, I will leave some resources in the description. Everybody, that's it. Stay safe, be good to one another, and as always, God bless.